A few years ago, when I was living in Kingston with some friends, I noticed there was a squirrel who was often in our garden, so I thought I'd buy some nuts and start feeding the little nut grubbin. I started off by simply leaving a pile of monkey nuts on the decking. My bedroom was on the ground floor at the back of the house, so I could sit in there and look through the double doors to see if he turned up. He found them pretty quickly, and now he had a taste for the good stuff. The training had begun. Now that phase 1 was complete, I moved the pile onto the step leading into my room. He was a bit hesitant to come that close, as I basically had my face and camera smooshed up against the doors looking right at him, so I had to throw a couple of nuts back onto the decking to get him used to coming closer. I wanted to get him to come into my room, because why wouldn't you want a squirrel in your room? So I laid out a nice little welcome mat / grotty old hand towel for him and scattered some more nuts on it. He popped up onto the step to check it out, and then he took his first steps inside.
That's one small step for
squirrels.
He was quickly making himself at home in my room, and it wasn't long before he would sit and eat the occasional nut inside instead of taking them straight back out. I hope you're going to clean up that mess. I then let him get used to this phase for a little while before I levelled it up.
Now it was time to introduce obstacles.
I got this lovely little plastic storage container and popped a few nuts on top of it, with the grotty towel leading up to it just so my new buddy had some familiarity with the situation. After nearly himself, he popped back in to collect his prize. I thought I'd try again, but this time with the box on its side, so that he could hop on a bit easier. But he didn't fancy hopping just yet, and instead just pinched two that he could reach from the floor. But he underestimated my cunning. I simply moved the pile of nuts further away from the edge, rendering that technique completely useless, fool of a rodent. He did eventually crack the code though, and make it to the pile. I let him collect a few nuts like this, but I noticed the box kept slipping every time he jumped off. So I put some other animals in it to weigh it down, and that seemed to solve the issue. The next logical step was to get him to come onto my bed, because why wouldn't you want a squirrel on your bed? So I repositioned my nuts, not in public of course, and waited to see whether he'd take the leap. He found this stage particularly challenging. To be fair to him, it is one of those classic awkward situations, getting into another mammal's bed. You could see his increase in brain activity by the matching increase in tail activity. Just look at that thing go. I thought I'd try sitting up on the bed myself, just to show him what could be accomplished with a little can-do attitude, but that didn't seem to help. We also had a flock of around 1,000 parakeets that would pass through our garden every evening. They would perch up in the trees, shriek at the world for half an hour, and then move on. As the current phase of training wasn't going so well, I thought I'd attempt feeding the nut hoarder by hand instead. I managed to get him to take one from just in front of my hand on this evening, but we didn't make an official transfer. The next day I summoned my hairy chum and tried again in my room. He was just about to take it, and then my girlfriend walked in on me and the squirrel. Squirrel. After explaining that we were just friends, I tried again and finally we made contact. This was an awesome moment for me. People feed squirrels by hand in parks all the time, but those ones are used to people being around them. This was a properly wild squirrel that now trusted me enough to eat out of my hand. I was chuffed. I then noticed my little pal had sustained an injury. Somehow it had lost a chunk out of its right ear, so I gave it the highly creative name, Chunky. It was time to try the bed again, and after some more hesitation from Chunky, he finally hopped on. My girlfriend attempted to scare him off with a couple of coughs, but he held his ground and claimed his prize. And now, after a few weeks of training, this is where I was at with him. Still. Just call me the Squirrel Whisperer. Now he really started to make himself at home. He even stashed a nut in one of my houseplants. And then he came back and did it again. At this point, he was basically a roommate, as he now had some of his possessions in my room. I repositioned the nuts again so that he had to walk over me and my girlfriend in order to reach them. Just look how far we've come.
It's such a nice feeling.
Then I wanted to get him to sit on my lap. Because why wouldn't you want a squirrel to sit on your lap? But on the first few attempts, he chose to pinch some of the grapes that were on the floor instead. It was good to see he was enjoying a varied diet. He loves a tasty grape, Eventually, I managed to get him to take one off my lap, and then to get on fully. I was definitely very attached to Chunky by this point. I always looked forward to seeing him. I'd see him before work to give him a morning treat, and then as soon as I got back from work, we'd hang out again. I treated him to a more varied choice of snacks, but quickly realised I shouldn't have bothered. Monkey nuts were definitely his favourite. You don't sound like a squirrel. What are you?
Oh, get the away from this. Not you. Massive better.
Next up, I removed the towel, so that he'd be sitting right in my lap, and I had a little handful of nuts for him to select from. I introduced him to Buddha, and fed him outside a few times, when he didn't pass, that is. I thought this next training phase would take some doing. I wanted him to climb up my leg a bit while I was sat down, but he pretty much just climbed straight up and grabbed the goods, showing just how close we were now. Right, time for a quick game. Guess which one of these 5 nuts Chunky will leave until last. If you get it right, you win that remaining nut. It is 3 years old now, but oh well, a prize is a prize. If you pick nut number 4, then congratulations, you are now 1 nut richer. It was time to introduce a new item. The possibilities were truly endless. I considered all available options and settled on something I thought could be quite extraordinary. A stick. Nut on a stick was a massive hit, but then I hatched an idea that actually led to something extraordinary. I give you a pole dancing squirrel. I kept running out of small bags of monkey nuts, so I brought a slightly bigger one and taught Chunky to climb up my leg when I was standing up. He mastered that pretty quickly, so I also got him to eat me like this. Look at my stupid little face. Just look how happy I am to have this wild squirrel sat on me. I had one idea remaining. One thing left I wanted to try. One thing I wanted to get Chunky to do more than anything else. To sit on my head. Of course, why wouldn't you want a squirrel to sit on your head? The first attempt went very well. He was completely happy to climb up me and reach the nuts from my shoulder. And then, on the next attempt, I did it. I got a wild squirrel to sit on my head and stuff as many nuts as it could in its gob before running off. But little did I know that he would be running off for the very last time. It was almost as if he knew his training was complete, as that was the last time I ever saw Chunky. I checked for him the next morning, then in the evening, then the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, but he never came back. I'll never know what happened to him, but I like to think he got offered a job dancing in the big city, and that he still thinks about me when he's on stage. It's hard to describe how much joy that squirrel brought me over a couple of months. I've had countless encounters with animals, but this one will always be the most special to me. It was a beautiful thing to gain such a high level of trust from a wild animal. It's easy to underestimate animals, but this squirrel definitely knew me and remembered what I would and wouldn't do. I looked forward to seeing him when I woke up, and training him after work was always the highlight of my day. He was nice enough to leave me a reminder of him though. I miss that little chap.